Welcome back to Media7, where we're looking at the regulatory heat the Murdoch press has brought down on newspapers as a whole. The first person to give evidence to Australia's Finkelstein review was Martin Hirst, formerly of AUT. I asked him what he said and what happened next.
Well, it was very interesting. I got a very good response initially. At the break after I'd finished speaking, I went out of the room and there was a bank of TV cameras there and some radio reporters and a couple of print journos. And they interviewed me about what I'd said, and I got up on the ABC News at lunchtime, and I was all over the television news that night. And even Nick Lays, who's the media diarist for the Australian newspaper, filed a story onto their website that afternoon that was just a straight take on the comments that I'd given. And so I thought that was all right. Then that night, about 10:30, I had a call from the Daily Telegraph, which is a Murdoch paper in Sydney. And basically, the young reporter who rang me just had one question for me. Basically, he said, "Are you now or have you ever been a communist?"
So the response seems to have been to start blaming the messenger.
Yeah, well, it turned into that, really did. For the next 3 or 4 days, I was mentioned all over the Murdoch papers. I was in an editorial. Mark Day's column mentioned me. Miranda Devine mentioned me in her column. Nick Lays had another go at me on the weekend. Andrew Bolt mentioned me on his blog. And basically, the idea, well, what was being said was that how dare they have somebody like me giving evidence before the inquiry because of my politics. I couldn't have possibly had anything useful or intelligent to say. And it really became just a personal attack on me and my credibility.
What do you think will come out of this inquiry?
There's no suggestion that the people running the inquiry or the Gillard government has got any stomach for a big fight with the Murdoch press. I mean, one of the more outrageous suggestions that was made in front of the judge was that the Murdoch empire should be broken up in Australia, that it should be, disaggregated, if you like. And that was made by Stephen Mayne, who's a former Murdoch journalist who's quite bitter about his experience working for the Herald Sun in particular in Melbourne. But the idea that the government is going to actually legislate to break up the Murdoch press in Australia is just not going to happen. It's just never going to happen that way.
Is it a matter of whenever Rupert Murdoch hears the word regulation, he reaches for his revolver?
Yes. Well, what he does, he actually, he just fashions the bullets. He gives them to other people to fire for him. He's a lot cleverer than having his own fingerprints on the pistol. But look, that seems to be happened. It was a knee-jerk reaction, and certainly, the Murdoch press in Australia has been under a bit of pressure recently. I mean, a number of fairly senior members of the government have attacked it in recent months. In fact, over the last 18 months, saying that it's running an agenda against the Gillard government, and certainly against Bob Brown and the Greens, who are in a minority coalition with the Gillard Labor government here. So you have a Labor-Green coalition, and the Murdoch press has been absolutely vicious, I think, on it over the last 18 months, and taking just about every opportunity to say bad things, nasty things about the Gillard government.
Do you see real potential for a change in media regulation from this?
I don't think there's going to be that much change, to be perfectly honest. I don't think, as I said, the political fight that the government would face if it tried to introduce broadcast-style regulation over what has traditionally been an unregulated market, which is the print industry, I think would cause huge ructions here, and you'd probably get every media organisation and most bloggers in Australia being against that happening. So the government would be fighting an uphill battle, and it's hanging on by the skin of its teeth at the moment, so it doesn't want to pick any more fights it can't win.
And so we're right where we began, at home. I'm joined now by the Secretary of the Media Freedom Committee, Tim Pankhurst. Welcome, Tim.
Hello, Russell.
Well, we haven't seen any word of a regulatory review like those ones, but we have seen the police recently entering newsrooms during an election campaign. What did you make of that?
Yes, we did, and look, I think that was it's a misuse of police resources. It was very unfair and unfortunate action that was initiated by the Prime Minister in the heat of an election campaign.
Do you think New Zealand editors are particularly bold when they face that kind of pressure? I mean, certainly no one seemed prepared to publish and be damned.
No, they didn't, and I think you can mount a strong argument that they should have. The context of that recording was very important. It was, in fact, a media stunt in a public place, and it was a conversation between two key politicians could have had a real bearing on the makeup of our government after the election.
Nonetheless, it seems that Stephen Joyce correctly calculated that the public contempt for the press would overwhelm any ideas about press freedom.
I think so. I think their polling was showing them that, look, you stick to your guns, look, there isn't sympathy for the media on this one. I think that was probably caught up in wider political support. But the huge irony, of course, is that it opened the door for Winston Peters, the Freddy Krueger of New Zealand politics.
Does that, though, suggest that newspapers need to do something to restore themselves in the opinion of New Zealanders? The fact that that did work?
Look, I don't think it does. Again, I think the context is really important, and the media is often unpopular as it goes about its work in lifting stones and shining light in dark places.
During the election campaign, Labor emerged with a media regulation policy that seemed to basically want to make everything statutory, to combine the BSA and the Press Council. The Law Commission has, it seems, dallied with these ideas as well. Do you see a danger in the loss of independent regulation?
I think there is a real danger in that, and we want to be very careful that there's no sort of backlash from events that are happening in the UK and Australia that aren't related to the situation here. But as far as the Law Commission's paper goes into the issues paper that they're due to publish in mid-December on regulation of online media, we have quite a lot of sympathy for what they're trying to do, in that we've argued that if the online sphere wants to be treated as part of the mainstream, then it has to pass two tests, and they are that they be subject to a code of ethics and they be subject to a complaints procedure, as the mainstream media are.
Is it also the case that an independent regulator must demonstrate itself to be independent and not simply a tool of the industry it's trying to regulate? I mean, certainly the PCC in London seemed to go a long way the other way. It was ineffective.
Look, I think it was, and look, there's a strong case for renewal and review there. As far as the Press Council in this country goes, it is a self-regulatory body, but I was looking at the complaints so far this year. There have been 56 that have been held, and 18 of those have been partially or completely upheld, and the outcome of that is that editors have to publish adverse findings, and no editor wants to be in a position where they're publishing in their newspapers evidence that they haven't acted fairly and properly. I'm
often struck by that. The penalties are not onerous, but editors really hate being rapped by the Press Council, don't they?
They sure do. I have been in that position, and you don't like it.
You've also been, we were talking about the Murdochs, you've been a Murdoch editor at the old INL. Did you ever get leaned on?
No, look, never. I also worked for Murdoch on the Australian in Australia as a political reporter, and you were always very conscious there of the political leanings of the proprietor and the senior editors. But as you say, INL in this country was 50% owned by Murdoch, and he really got a start here, and after he launched in Adelaide.
So why didn't it happen in New Zealand? Were we just not important enough?
Yeah, I guess that could be a factor, but I think too, I think a key difference here is that we are a very small society. Editors and reporters are accountable. You can have somebody come up to you in the supermarket and have you on about something that you've written or published. We're not remote, we're very connected to our communities, and I think that's a governor on behaviour.
And yet Stephen Joyce's claim that newspapers here are going down the News of the World road did seem to find some sympathy. People do have that perception that maybe standards are slipping.
I just think there's no evidence for that at all. I think that's a really spurious argument, and I think that you can forgive the Prime Minister partly, I guess, that it was in the context of a close election campaign.
There's a few more celebrities on the front page than there were 5 years ago, aren't there, though?
Yes. Yes, there's no doubt about it. I think you are seeing more populist journalism, and you are seeing the readers respond to that, and the fact that circulations and readerships in this country are pretty well holding up.
And no matter how much they complain, that's what they want to read.
Yes, I think there's a double edge here. sometimes readers and audiences will decry something whilst lapping it up.
Tim Pankhurst, thank you for your time. Thanks also to James Robinson and Martin Hurst, and to you for watching. We'll be back with Media7 at the same time next week. Until then, goodbye.